And now we are live. I was just talking about how the live button lags a little bit, and here we are. So, welcome to the P2W Fantasy Podcast here. Changing things up. Kevin and I usually are on a Wednesday, but we got a holiday week coming up here. Reflecting a bit on week 11, and we're actually we have some good timing because we have another game to end the week here tonight. We got a podcast right before that game. So, what's up, guys? Nick Scripp here with my buddy Kevin. Kevin, how are things going? What's up?
They're going well, man. Just enjoying the holiday, and I get the week off. Unlike I think some of you guys, but I get lucky, so I get a week off. I'm just hanging out, enjoying some time with the family. My whole family, we're getting over a little cold, so we got some head cold thing going on right now, but it seems to be clearing up. And so just watching some football, and I'm gonna enjoy it tonight, and hoping Barkley's back. That's my goal tonight. Watch Barkley, and hopefully he comes back well, ready to go.
Should be an interesting game. Obviously, Tampa, I'm sure, is a slight favorite over the Giants. Yeah. And I think I threw this at the end of the show sheet. But do you need anything specific from this game for fantasy? I know I personally, so I'm looking. I actually had a team that had Jonathan Taylor, who had that massive week. But on the same team, I had Dak Prescott, and I had T. Higgins, and I had Rashad Bateman. I had just like a mix of guys that didn't do much. I had Swift and Taylor and Waller do good, but what I need tonight is Tom Brady to not go absolutely crazy, and I need the Tampa Bay defense not to go absolutely crazy, and I think that it's possible that both of those things happen, so fingers crossed. But what about you?
In reality, I need Mike Evans just to kind of have a Mike Evans blow-up game. I would like that. I appreciate that. I need him to outscore Leonard Fournette in the league, so I need Leonard Fournette not to have a very good game. And then on the flip side, I think I'm playing your brother in a league that I didn't really do very well in, but I'm still up like 30, and he has Daniel Jones and Fournette. So I would appreciate Daniel Jones to have a Dak-like game this week, and just not do well, Daniel Jones. That would be a good thing for me.
I hope it happens because this league that you're referencing, he's mentioned a couple times, like, have you seen my team in this league? Like, do you see what my record is? So I hope he takes the L this week because I'm sick of hearing about it.
It's going to be close. I definitely, we had the same record, me and your brother. And I just, Alex Collins did not do much for me. I had Mac. Mac didn't do, but who kills me is A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is killing me right now. And that's the big one. If I could just get A.J. Brown to do something, it would have been great. But yeah, it doesn't look good. Unfortunately, I think he's going to have some, I don't know. Daniel Jones and Fournette tonight, don't do anything.
Could be the case. We'll see soon enough. We have like an hour before the game starts, so we'll be there shortly. So if you are tuning in, we are going to recap week 10, but we're not just going to read off what happened. We have some topics that will be important moving forward for the rest of the season. So a little bit of a reflection and then looking forward here. Easy up on the Dak game, says Kenny.
I'm a Cowboys fan.
Yeah,
I can say that.
You do have the pass. You do have the pass. As always, this podcast is partnered up with the Fantasy Points Media Group, one-stop shop for everything fantasy related, whatever you're looking for, projections, rankings, advanced stats, articles, streams. It's all in one spot. They have a discount on the site already, but you can use my promo code for an additional discount, 21WIN10. And again, if you are tuning in, stick with us, reviewing some stuff, looking forward. Let's go.
I play to win, no fear to give. I feel but I can't forgive. I go all in this time, yeah, I won't regret. I'll pick the best, don't trip, they don't understand. I play to win, yeah, I play to win, I play to win. Yeah, I play to win, I play to win. Oh, play to win, I play to win. Yeah, I play to win, I play to win.
All right, Kevin, let's talk about some good things first. All right, so which performance from week 10 do you think was a sign for a jump in a player's fantasy stock for the rest of the year? So you're looking and saying, hey, this was good, might be good the rest of the way. What's a guy that comes to mind?
Yeah, for me, it's Ayuk, right? I feel like it has to be. He looked pretty good. Again, I know that it was against the lowly Jaguars, and they're not very good. So I understand that. But I do think that with what he's accomplished, he's kind of come out of that doghouse. I like the targets that you see there. I think as long as that running back situation is kind of in the air. So when we talk about, if Mitchell's going to be hurt, I think he'll come back this week. But hey, that's an injury to the hand. That those things are always kind of touchy. I think Debo's going to play a lot more running back, so that's going to open up targets for Ayuk, especially the wide receiver position. You're going to see he's very efficient, 7 for 7, 7 receptions, 7 targets, 85 yards, a touchdown. I like that. And again, he put up the numbers that you used to seeing last year, 21 points. Now that means in 3 weeks he's had 18 points in 21-point games. I like that. I know that in between there he didn't do very well, but that was a different game script. So I like that. I think that we're going to start seeing him actually hit his value at what we had preseason.
And another good sign here is through 8 weeks of football, he never was above 45 receiving yards. And now 2 out of the 3 last games, weeks 9 through 11, he's had 89 and 85. So that's another good sign. Obviously, that attributes to his overall fantasy production for the week, and the targets are there. So a lot of good signs, and it's good to see him getting it done while other guys are on the field, because we've heard the narrative before, like, well, what's Ayuk going to be when Debo and Kittle are both healthy? So if he's having weeks like that, I think you have a little bit more of a peace of mind for it when it comes to that. My guy that I want to talk about, and it was the coldest, it was the coldest thing in his first game when he, took the helmet off and he said, "I'm back" to the camera in the crowd. That was cool. This game, now he's going to the center logo and he's doing the Superman out there. I mean, he's entertaining as hell right now. You have to say that. But he's also been very productive. This his first game that he was involved with, he was only on the field, I think, for 4 attempts and 3 carries. But if we look at that game of only having, again, 3 carries, 4 attempts, passing attempts, combined with this past week where he was the starter, 3 passing and 2 rushing touchdowns. So that's 5 total touchdowns in 2 games. This game, he looked good. He looked good. I don't think he's going to be a guy that is going to get, 300 passing yards in an outing, but he's going to be efficient. It looks like 21 for 24, 77.8 with his completion percentage for Cam Newton. He's got the rushing upside. He had another rushing touchdown in this one, 26.16 fantasy points as of right now for the week, QB4. So it could change with tonight if, depending on what Tom Brady and Daniel Jones do. But Cam Newton, if you look at the schedule too, Miami's coming up. Then they hit the bye, but then they have Atlanta, Buffalo, and Tampa. So the only one that I have, a little bit hesitation with is Buffalo, but we've seen Buffalo get exposed recently too. But the schedule looks good. He's got the dual threat ability upside there, and he's got good weapons around him. I know that's like the common thing to say, but if you look at what he had last year with the Patriots compared to this year of having DJ Moore and CMC, just those 2 guys are levels ahead of what he had last year. So I kind of like Cam the rest of the season, even though he's been a guy I haven't really been high on too much the last 2 years.
Yeah, the biggest question I kept getting on Sunday was Cam or Tua, and it kind of worked itself out. It was pretty close, back and forth. But I do like Cam in terms of just if he can get the ball to his playmakers, he's going to be fine. And that's the things Darnold wasn't doing, and that was the thing those other guys weren't doing. I mean, look at the targets for DJ Moore. Look what he does with CMC. And CMC is still underrated. I don't care what anybody says. People forget how good that guy is. And so when you're looking at the weapons that he has around him, why can't he get a rushing touchdown? And he could probably get 3 total touchdowns each game, or at least 2. So especially if you're streaming or you're looking for those guys, I like his down the stretch, like you mentioned. And you know what? This is also helping out his dynasty value. And in my opinion, if I have him in dynasty, and if you are looking for something, you have to wait and get it first. I don't think you can get anything less. And this is the time to capitalize. If you held him in dynasty, congratulations. I know a couple of people dropped him right before he got signed by the Panthers. He looked like a dead asset. This is where you go and you grab him, but don't give him up for anything but a first. I think that when we see it, I think he is going to be a QB1 towards the end of the season, like Troy talks about there. I do see the upside there, and if that's the case, you can't sell him for anything less than the first. And then he might even be an asset next year. Who knows? The landscape for quarterbacks is going to be interesting. I counted today 12 teams that probably going to be either have a different quarterback or a different change or going to be looking for a different quarterback. The draft class coming up, as I know, as I do the Debbie stuff, it's not the greatest quarterback class, probably 4 first-rounders, maybe 5. And there's going to be some shuffling. I heard Trubisky's name get thrown out there as a possible starter next year. If Trubisky can get a starter job, Cam can keep his job. And I think that he's going to have some dynasty value next year as well.
And I think make a lot of good points. I like the point a lot about the first because, especially in obviously more towards the super flex leagues, if you really have a guy who's a contender and you had Cam and you're a middle of the road team, you're a bottom of the level team, this is a guy that you can get a lot of good assets for right now in super flex leagues. If there's a team out there that sees, hey, look what this guy's done in 2 games with only one true start. He's doing nothing but score touchdowns. He has a good fantasy outing. This could be a guy that could be a championship push sort of quarterback in a super flex league. So if you do have him, you're not selling him for the low. I'm with Kevin right now in capitalizing, especially if you're a guy that's in a rebuild, for instance, and you're in a super flex league and you have Cam Newton. You don't necessarily need him for 5 years. But yeah, it's interesting. We'll see. I guess it depends. One quarterback leagues who your quarterback is. There's teams and leagues that stream every week. And if he's got a couple of juicy matchups here, he might be a multi-start guy. And I do like his stock guy.
Well, you'll like this deal because you love your boy some Robert Woods. So I'm assuming a team that's competing needs a quarterback. So they traded Robert Woods straight up for Cam Newton in a Superflex league yesterday.
Interesting.
So you could go get Robert Woods right now for Cam. I mean, 2 weeks ago you could get shipped for Cam, maybe $1 blind bid. Like that's pretty much it. Now you're gonna go out there and get Robert Woods and this stuff. That's what I'm talking about. Don't go get a third or second, like the stuff like that. And I've seen it. I saw like 2/3 and a second go for Cam. No, you get a first, you get an asset. He even got traded with a second, so it was a 2022 second Cam for Elijah Moore, your guy. If you compare those things, go get Elijah Moore. You have that ceiling. You think he can be that guy? Go get it.
And that is just like, that is a huge win in a dynasty league. Just being able to capitalize on who's hot right now. Could it be hot for 2 years? Sure, but is it going to help you in the long term? Maybe not. But find ways to get the deal done. I like that a lot. Flip side of the same question. Big performance, but we shouldn't overhype it. So they did real good, but let's not get carried away here. Who's the guy that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, it's our guy Darnell Mooney. I like Darnell, and I think he's done well. And I know Christian Williams, he just got shit on by Old Takes Exposed, but he did put out some advanced stats. He got some advanced stats from I think it's PFF or whatever. And Darnell Mooney's had a very solid season. It hasn't been amazing what we thought a breakout season. I think that has more to do with the offense and kind of what they've looked at. I mean, just as well as I do. You're being a Bears fan, but you know what? He had 16 targets yesterday. Did you know that? That is insane.
Yeah. That's hearing it from a podcast, and not to cut you off, but I did just get a sleeper notification that Andy Dalton will start on Thursday with Justin Fields having that rib injury, just as a timing of the sleeper notification. But yeah, go.
That's unfortunate. Now I don't get to watch CD or Justin Fields on Thanksgiving.
Or Jared Goff, I don't think your boy. I don't know if he's gonna play either.
Yeah, man, damn it. But you know what? 16 targets, only 5 catches, so efficiency wasn't as wide as I see. He did have 121 yards, but we all know that he had that long 60-yard touchdown broken play. I liked Mooney, but I think we have to just say, hey, he did have 17 points the week before because he had a touchdown. I think he's excelling to the point where we're like, hey, he could be an asset, but he's still, to me, a wide receiver 3, 4, not really a guy. Maybe if you have other options you want to start in that area.
Yeah, two really good weeks back to back. As far as I'm looking at scoring in one of my leagues, over 20 points in both of them for PPR. But the big thing that you alluded to, and I heard it earlier on another podcast, I think I was listening to the fantasy footballers or something. They said, you look at the 16 and that looks really good, but then you look at the 5 and you draw some questions. And kind of same as last week, he had 6 targets, so not nearly as much, 10 less, but he only caught half of them. He caught 3 of them. And it seems to kind of be that way. You look a couple weeks back, 5 targets, he caught 2 of them. I mean, I don't know if that's a him thing, and I don't sit there and, in all honesty, I watch the games as a Bears fan, but I don't grind the tape and see if it was him, him sort of thing, or the quarterback. But it's hard to bank on consistency in this offense. I think that there's been signs that this offense can do certain things. I mean, Monty's a guy you want to bank on. Had a slow week, right? Komet had a really big opportunity this week. Had a dud of a week, and Allen Robinson's been terrible the entire season. Didn't play in this last game, but it's an offense that I find some I find some struggles trying to find consistency with, I guess. 2 good weeks in a row, but I'm not trading the house for him.
No, I wouldn't trade the house for him yet, but I do like him. Like, I do think he has
Yeah.
asset. And like when we talk about for Dynasty, I know this is kind of a redraft stuff, but I don't care today. So if you're looking at a Dynasty asset, what is that Bears wide receiver room going to look like? And I think that when we look forward, I think they bring someone in. They'll probably draft somebody. But Mooney's going to be in that rotation. He's got to be in the top 2 guys next year unless they absolutely overhaul things. I don't think that's going to happen. New offense, yes, but you know what? Damn, it needs to be, right? Nagy needs to go. So if we're looking at that perspective, I like him next year. But this year, I think we temper expectations. He did have 2 over 20. Good for him. But you got to be concerned. And Andy Dalton, I don't trust Andy Dalton.
And from experience from last season with your Cowboys, and now I'm getting a good taste on Thanksgiving of Andy Dalton. So I'm gonna make sure. Yeah, I know. I'm gonna have to text my entire family and say, hey, just so you guys know, while we're watching the game, our home team, we got Andy this week. So that'll be interesting. My guy might get some pushback a little bit because I know he's really talented, right? And he's shown some good things this season. But mine's Rondale Moore, and what's really good, 11 targets. So we're kind of the opposite of what we said about Darnell Mooney. 11 targets, he caught all 11 of them. He had 16.1 fantasy points. He had a really good game. I have so many issues, though, with the Rondale Moore stock right now. And I think he's a great dynasty player because it's a good offense. He's tied to a good quarterback. There's some aging wide receivers in that room. I think he's a good dynasty player, but I have issues having faith right now in redraft because here's a list here. First time in 5 games he scored above 7.5 fantasy points. So I know it's a good week, but another one, there was no Hopkins in this game. I mean, that added to his stock. And as I add on to that, the last 2 weeks, his snap percentage has been 33% and 39%. So there's no Hopkins out there, and he's still not on the field enough. So he did have 11 targets. That's great. He caught 11 of them. That's good as well. But another issue that I have as I continue down my list here, the opening 2 games, he had nice yardage, 68 and 114 receiving yards. Weeks 3 through 11, he has yet to hit 60 receiving yards. So he had 11 catches in this game for 51 yards. So he's going nowhere on the field with these catches. And the last thing is Christian Kirk, Zach Ertz. These guys also have big days sporadically. So it's hard to trust that Rondale Moore, with the lack of yardage, the lack of him being on the field, and the lack of consistency as far as everybody goes, I'm not into it. So I know it's a good week. Maybe you can say he should be rostered, but I don't have a lot of faith just seeing how many bad games he's had.
Yeah, and you know what? With Hopkins coming at some point, he's got to come back. Like, there's a lot of things going on in that offense that we don't have to like a little bit. I like Moore, but he's got a weird cult following. It's kind of like the LaVisca cult out there, and I think that when we look at like those guys, then we got to limit our expectations for these guys. But Moore, I have no Rondale Moore, and I'm in a lot of leagues. Like, I just never bought into the hype with him, and I don't think that he has that much value this season. I definitely don't think he has much dynasty value.
Yeah. See, you're going down the dynasty path there too. So you're saying both. But
yeah, I'm out.
He's a guy you've evaluated, I'm sure, a ton through your Devy work, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just the way I look at guys like him is like it's not worth the risk to me. It's a reason why I won't take Drake London from USC because I know what's going to happen. He's going to get built up. And it's just going to be like, hey, I don't want to grab him. And they're 2 different profiles. London's 6'5", Rondale's 5'2". I'm just kidding. But Rondale, he's smaller. He's going to have those areas there. There's guys that, like, when I go into rookie drafts and I look, there's guys I don't mind missing because the hit rate on them are so low, under 10%, under 15%, that if I miss on a guy like that, that's okay. I'll take the higher hit rate and hope that he's going to do well for my dynasty teams. It's why I have no Jalen Reagor. I looked at him as the same way. I didn't like Reagor coming out. I said, hey, that hit rate is very, very hard. He was going at the end of the first sometimes. I took Justin Jefferson ahead of Reagor in pretty much all of my rookie drafts, and that's worked out for me because I believe in the profile and believe in my process.
All right. So moving forward, we talked about big performances and being hyped up or not hyped up about it. Now let's go on the opposite end here with the bad performances. I typically on a weekly basis have a series of guys I list out, and I said, here are some of your bad performances. And there was plenty this week. But who to you is a guy that had a bad game, but you're not worried about? Because I have to ask this question all the time, and I appreciate everybody in the comments here. I forgot to play some of them, but looks like people on Facebook and YouTube are tuning in. Hopefully Twitter sorts it out and we can actually see the Twitter comments one of these days. But back to it. A lot of people go too far sometimes with a bad performance. People think that they need to now sell this guy. They need to drop certain players. They should trade them away. They should bench them. Other people will say, that they happen. So it's good to evaluate in the proper way bad performances. So what's a bad performance from this last week, Kevin, that you're not worried about it? They had a bad game. You don't care, though.
Yeah, I'm going to go Gallup, Michael Gallup. He came back from his injury. Everybody kind of assumed he was going to be there. Cooper went out, and then CD went out. And then that performance had more to do with the offensive line issues and also the other issues that we've seen from Dak. They just didn't have a very good game. So if we're going to talk about it, it is what it is. I think Gallup's going to be just fine. I don't mind giving up a 2022 second for Gallup. I believe in his dynasty value, but also the rest of the season. CD is not out technically Thursday, but there is not a lot of optimism from what I heard. He's in the concussion protocol. They'll probably know by tomorrow, I'm assuming, or early Wednesday. But I don't know. And if that's the case, you got to fire up Gallup again against a very juicy matchup with the Raiders. So if I can do that, I believe in Gallup moving forward, especially this season. The injuries are kind of there, and Cedric Wilson played well. But as we saw, Cedric Wilson is a product of his environment. The guys around him and everything there. Cedric Wilson is not that good of a wide receiver. He's just good for what was around him and the weapons around him. Gallup can do the same thing, but Gallup's a legit wide receiver 2 in the NFL. So that's where I have it valued.
And with Gallup, I think, again, had the off week, but he is a must start. He is the wide receiver 1, right? Going into Thursday, if both guys, I mean, he's going to be that guy. Here's an interesting question, because, I'm a guy that I look at the box scores and I look at the fantasy points of every single team, but I don't, get enough individual game time to see things all the time. I see clips and highlights in the red zone stuff. And I try to catch back later. But what was up with the Cowboys line against the Chiefs? Because the Chiefs don't come up, they don't come off as a team that, gets to the quarterback a ton unless I'm missing something. But it seemed like this offense just struggled. I mean, Dak had a really bad game, and it seemed like he didn't have time in the pocket. So I think that kind of had something to do with Gallup's performance, because he did have 10 targets, 5 catches on it, though. But that's what I kept seeing, is that, like, Dak was getting, bull rushed in this game against the Chiefs, which was weird.
Yeah, I think a couple other things, like they had to move their guard, Connor McGovern over in for Connor Williams. They had that. Smith, obviously, when we talk about what Smith was there, left tackle is going to be out. So when we look at him, I mean, that's the big one. I think, with Smith being gone, he plays a very valuable role there. We couldn't establish anything on the ground either. I think it just kind of culmination of areas. And I will say this, I like Kellen Moore, but I can be critical of him too at times, because I feel like his play calling gets a little too cute. And I do think that when you're looking at what Kellen Moore likes to do, is I think sometimes less is more with our play calling. And he does try to do different formations. You'll see it kind of, and I don't like that. I like when he keeps it simple. I think Pollard needs to be used a little bit more, but I will say this, I talked about it this morning. I think Tony Pollard is going to get moved around. If CD is out too, I don't mind playing Pollard in my flex. I know he didn't have a very good game, but they're going to have to get their ball into their weapons, and I think he's a good weapon for them. So look for him to kind of get moved around the slot a little bit, more of a receiving option. It would not shock me if CD was out for Pollard to get like 8 to 10 targets.
I think that makes more sense than grabbing the 5th guy, on the depth chart and throwing him out there. I mean, if Pollard can operate in the slot or do some end arounds and be used a little bit more creatively, I think that's more in their favor, just because he's a talented guy, and he's a guy that's been on the field a lot more than those other guys throughout the last two seasons here. A guy that comes to mind for me, and I try to mix up takes a little bit and not just speak on the same guys all the time. So for this is a guy I've never been super high on. And I'm not even saying that he's going to be, an absolute stud rest of season, but seeing Miles Sanders come back and he scored 7.4 fantasy points, I think the general outlook or the general statement might follow and say, well, that's he's back, but look what he's done, But I thought there were some good signs here because you had three guys previously, right, between Howard, Scott, and Gainwell, who Gainwell didn't even suit up in this one, who were all getting tons of work. And even though I think Scott and Howard combined for, I think, 16 carries as well, seeing that Miles Sanders just came back and he got 16 carries, which was his season high. So in all the games he was healthy before the season, he never had 16 carries. So he came back from injury and got 16 carries right away for 94 yards against a New Orleans defense that is pretty good against the run. He had 5.9 yards per 5.9 yards per carry. So that, to me, that's a good sign. And another good sign is the schedule. So the Giants, the Jets, bye Washington, Giants, Washington. And we can look and say, well, this team is decent against the run, and this team is middle of the pack against the run. All I see is a bunch of teams that the Eagles can beat. And when I see teams that the Eagles can beat, in my opinion, I think that means that they can use the run game more instead of having Jalen Hurts throw the ball a lot more than they want to. So I think if this is a schedule coming up that they can build some leads in, if they do catch some consistency and catch some fire, I think we can see a lot more Miles Sanders days where he's getting 16-plus touches. And to me, that means a lot in fantasy. And I personally got him for free in a keeper league because somebody dropped him a couple weeks ago. And I'm not going to say he's going to be a top 10 RB1, RB the rest of the way, but a lot of good signs for me.
I like Miles Sanders. You know what? If you watch that game, which unfortunately I was watching, even though I don't like the Eagles, he should have had 2 touchdowns. He got stuffed in the goal line again, and then he had that fumble and put him in the doghouse, and that definitely hurt him. But if he didn't, and if he made that one catch on the sideline, we were talking about like, oh my God, everybody's on him again. And I do think that when we saw that value that was going to be there, I believe Jordan Howard's out too, so he's going to miss week 12.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So if Jordan Howard's out, you can't just rely on what he's done. And Gainwell got it, like you said, inactive. Boston Scott will be there. Miles Sanders is going to be the guy again. And I think that right now he's still a good buy in every format, especially there. And I know some guys were talking about how they picked him up off waivers last week in redraft. So if you can do that right now, that is a good sign. And I do think moving forward I can't believe I said Jordan Howard being injured helps Sanders, which is like a 2019 take. But here we are. And so I do think it helps. And so give me Sanders. I think rest of the season is a good play. Again, I'm not a Sanders guy like you either. I never really have been. I just look at the matchups and say, okay, hey, based on what's going on, how can we do that? I think he's a good play. And I like that idea of him, especially he's got a good 15, 16, 17 weeks. And that's kind of what you're looking for. If you're a contender, he's not that expensive right now. You can go grab him.
All right. So on the flip side here, so we said bad performance. We're not concerned though. Let's go on the opposite end there. So bad performance, but you are concerned maybe rest of the season, or you're concerned the next couple weeks, whatever the case is. Who's the guy that comes to mind?
Josh Jacobs, man. I'm concerned about Josh Jacobs. When we look at that I don't know how much we can take into account the Raiders being just, I don't know. We had racism, we had murder, we had a lot of stuff going on that Raiders roster. I just don't. There's a lot of turnover. People forget that Jacobs is only 23. He's still young, so I do still like Jacobs, but he, was hurt at the beginning of the year. Still not getting he's getting a little bit more targets, so that is kind of impressive. So he got 7 last week, but he only had 24 yards. So when you're looking at that, you're like, God, what is going on here? 11 points fantasy. Again, he's not rushing the ball very much. He still has not. He's only had he's had 10 attempts in 4 out of the 7 games that he's played. I believe. Hold on, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I can't count. 8 games. But still, the last 2 games, because of game scripts and everything that's there, he's only had 7 to 9 attempts. Now, he had a little bit more targets because the game scripts are so bad, but he's still not producing what you'd like to produce. And he did well at the beginning, but I don't hate him. I just think that we got to be a little bit worried going forward. They're going to change their new regime. So next year for Dynasty, yes. Redraft this week. I mean, they're playing Washington, Kansas City, Cleveland, Denver to kind of finish it out in Dallas. Those are some tough matchups as well. I don't know. I'm nervous. I'm nervous about Jacobs. I don't necessarily know where he's at. I think you have to start him, probably, depending on what your rosters are like right now, especially with the running back position. But I will say some running backs coming back. We saw CEH come back. You're going to get Hunt coming back. You're going to see some guys coming back now where he might be expendable to where you don't have to actually start him on your leagues.
Yeah, and the signs that we thought we'd see would, beginning of the season, we would say like Jacobs, if only he got the passing work, and now you add Kenyon Drake, and we're saying like the opposite. He's getting a little bit of passing work now. 2 games of five catches. He's not going for a ton of yardage in them, but he's not getting the carries. I think we expected the opposite of that, getting a bunch of carries and no receptions. So I'm hoping that one stays and the other one changes. So what stays is these 5 catch games, and then he gets a bump in carries. But yeah, the total touches are not what you expect out of a RB1 for a team. And the Raiders offense is kind of hard to predict at times. We just saw 2 weeks ago, Brian Edwards had a really nice game, and now I think he just laid another goose egg for like the second time this season.
And 1 carry, baby. 1 carry by Brian Edwards.
There you go. For negative yards, or was it just no yards? Or
I don't think it was any yards, actually. I think it was just 1 carry.
He had 0. So, I mean, I didn't even know he had a carry because I'm just looking at that goose egg again. But Jacobs, super up and down the season. I mean, last season, we saw a handful of games with 20-plus fantasy points, I'm pretty sure. And this year, 17 points has been his max so far, and that was week 1. He's been floating around the 10 to 15-point range, and this is another game that's had 11 fantasy points. So I'm kind of struggling to see the upside. So unless the carries get a good bump and we see like weeks 5 and 6, 15 and 16 carries, and then he gets those 5 catches, then maybe we're more comfortable. But like you're saying, if you got a handful of options, I don't know. I mean, I know on one team, not to go on a rant here, I know on one team I'm really trying to make a playoff push for. It's like one of my worst leagues. I have Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, and then I have Jeff Wilson Jr., who I guess I don't know, how that's going to go. Josh Jacobs, Miles Sanders, Javonte Williams. Maybe I'm taking a stab at a wide receiver instead of plugging in Miles Sanders if I have JT and Swift. I don't know.
Yeah, that's just a tough option. I mean, a lot of guys probably drafted him right now. Well, he's probably people's running backs 3, 2, depending on. He was pretty low as his ADP, so it's not like it's a total loss. But again, you're looking at a guy, if you're the running back 1 on a roster, you should be getting tons of touches, right? 20, 25. He's just not getting that. So I forget who it is. It's someone probably way smarter than me. But they say, hey, touches lead to fantasy points. If he can't have those touches there, and they're going to be in some negative game scripts. And Carr's been ass too. Like Carr has not been good. He's not been efficient. That they don't have receivers out there. They don't have weapons, and that offensive line's banged up too. So again, a lot of reasons why I'm a little worried about Jacobs.
So my guy, and I'm not going to say he won't have a good game, here on out or anything like that. I'm just saying I'm really concerned, and it's Russell Wilson. And I dropped the stat, and I don't have it in front of me, but I looked, in the last time that Russell Wilson had under 10 fantasy points in back-to-back games was back in 2017, and I had the marks. I don't know, it was under 15 or something like that. The last time he had the point is the last time he had back-to-back bad games was 2017. So I said on Twitter, I think this has got to be a bounce back because Russell Wilson just doesn't have back-to-back terrible fantasy days, and he did. He had another bad day. And if we look at how he looks in these games, back-to-back games, 50 and 53.8 completion percentage, 0 touchdowns in either of these 2 games through the air that he's returned from injury from. Under 9 fantasy points in both, which is a burner for the quarterback position. Your quarterback cannot score under 10 points in fantasy. That kills your team. I had Dak in a league, and I had Mahomes in the same league, actually. I was in a super flex league. Commissioner Breeze, my guy, he runs a league. I have Mahomes in Dak, and they both scored under 10 points, I'm pretty sure. And I lost because that's one of the most solidified usual points is your quarterback scoring somewhere between maybe 15 and 22 points. I would say there's some sort of medium average. We could say with Russell Wilson, the Green Bay defense has been decent this year. Arizona defense has been decent this year. So did he just play 2 decent defenses and had a bad day coming back from injury? My concern is that he came back too soon. He came back too soon from this injury, from the surgery, and he's not himself. And for me, seeing back-to-back games under 9 fantasy points, why do I plug him into my lineup next week? I know he's Russell Wilson and he's a great football player, but what faith do I have?
So it's funny you say this because I actually said he's my bounce back guy this week with Jacob earlier, but only because you're exactly right. What I said was, and I talked about this a few weeks ago, I thought he was going to come back this game. I figured he was going to have the bye 2 weeks. He'd have off. I think they were rushing him because they wanted to make the playoffs and be compete. But we all kind of know where that roster's at. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, especially when you pay Jamal Adams or you traded for him and gave up all your picks. That was a bad move. But I don't like this is the week I thought he'd come back. Now it doesn't seem like he's had any setbacks with that injury, so maybe this week is the week that he has that. Hey, here we go. This is the game. This is where I'm at. But the real problem with not even Russ, it's the freaking offense. How do you give Alex Collins and those guys that many carries? Like, I don't understand.
He's bad.
And I hate saying this because it's so stupid, but like, you got to let Russ cook, right? Like at a certain point, like you really got to let him throw the ball and move. And that's your best assets and your best weapons are what? Your receivers, Lockett, Metcalf, even Everett had an okay game the other day. Like those are where those targets should be going, not to Alex damn Collins. You got to move it. But I really feel like Pete Carroll's stuck in his old ways of running the ball and kind of doing those things, and it just doesn't work anymore. But I'm nervous as hell too. Like I would say this, he's my sneaky start sit. So it's not like I'm confident in him this week. But I will say, like, yeah, it's nerve-wracking going into us. And then when do they shut him down too? Because if they're not going to be competing, when does he shut himself down? I don't know if he would because he's such a competitor out here doing 2-minute drives when he's injured. But I would say, like, if they're not healthy and they're not doing those things, they might shut him down early. And, he can find himself on another team. So why would he want to get hurt?
Yeah, it's interesting. And you mentioned Collins. I feel like if their running game looked decent right now, maybe Russell Wilson would see more opportunities and more openings on the offense for the passing game. But Alex Collins has been terrible. The 1, 2, 3, 4 games in a row. Just from a fantasy perspective, he hasn't scored 6 fantasy points, but he's getting 16 carries. He's getting 11 touches here. He's getting another game with actually 3 straight games with 10 carries. And then before that, he had 17 total touches. This guy's terrible. But yeah, the offense doesn't look too good. I'm against Washington coming up. I'm not saying here to bench Russell Wilson necessarily. I mean, it depends who you have. I'm a little iffy about it just because we're seeing things that don't look super Russ right now with the completion percentage and the lack of touchdowns. But time will tell. I wouldn't be surprised either, though, with that. If there's talks about being shut down, I'm sure he would push back, and they don't want to make him unhappy if he might not be a Seahawk in the future. But we'll see.
I will. It's funny that you said that your stack you had. I have so much Dak Russell stack everywhere in my Superflex leagues. So let me tell you, I had a rough day yesterday. Have you ever had a league where, like, all your guys and you had looked at your opponent's roster and who he was playing and you're just like, you know what? I'm not even going to look because I know I got my ass kicked. So I'm just going to look at the loss and just move on because that's one of my leagues. I know I just got destroyed. So I haven't even looked at the score yet. I'm just going to look tomorrow when I lost and then I'm just going to move on.
Once in a blue moon, though, you'll look and that guy had a shit week too, and then you're happy for the next couple of days. But no, I'm with you. I'm with you with that. I got a guy I threw on this list because I didn't know where to put him because I'm a little confused right now, a little bit. I think he's talented too. I like him. I think his ceiling last year, and then I'm not even going to say this year, but last year we saw a good ceiling with him. He's a sophomore, and I don't know where to put him because he had a bad performance, but I don't know if I should be concerned or shouldn't be concerned. But it's T. Higgins. So T. Higgins, 2 catches on 3 targets for 15 yards. And that's not a usual T. Higgins game because he usually gets some decent targets. I think at one point he was leading the Bengals for targets per game at one point during this year. Obviously, Chase is the best fantasy option there, but Chase and Boyd had better days in this game this past week. The last 3 games before this, he's floated around in the 13-point range. So 13 fantasy points doesn't kill your team, but it's not really what we expect out of T. Higgins, who we think could do more because we've seen a lot more last year out of him. Again, like I said, the targets have been pretty good through the year, but I think he's a guy that what we thought his ceiling was is really not there right now because he's just pretty okay. Should we be concerned or should we not be concerned about T. Higgins?
So I think it's more about the Rams offense. And the reason why I say that is because I believe that not the Rams. What am I talking about?
I was going to let you go. I was going to let you go and have
the Bengals offense. Like, because when I was looking at the numbers, that's what I was trying to look up and I saw the Rams. The Bengals offense is one of the least in leagues for, passing plays, but also plays per game. And when you're looking at their offensive, efficiency, it just hasn't been there. They're just not running enough plays. And so they're not running enough plays for Chase. They're not running enough plays for Higgins. Boyd had an okay game the other day. I know you and me both like Boyd. He had an okay game. Mixon's doing better too. So I do think that they're using their offense a little bit differently too. They are relying on him. I think Mixon had 23 carries yesterday, somewhere around there. So I know he had those carries that we saw. So I just think it's more about what they're doing in that offense where they're not throwing the ball as much. I think it's part of Burrow. I think they're trying to get the ball out quick. They're using the run game a little bit more. So Higgins is going to take a back seat some games. I don't think he's an automatic start all the time, depending on what your roster looks like. I still believe it is talent, but I think that we have to temper our expectations based on that offensive output and what they're doing there.
Yeah, he just to me seems like I mean, this was a bad game, and that's a good point about the amount of plays that they're running, because that definitely has an impact. And there's been times where they have some bigger plays they don't need to, and it can do with just how the game's panning out too. But I mean, I guess he's a safe play because a lot of his games are around the same range. He opened up the season 15.8 and 16, which I'll take that all day for wide receiver. I mean, it's not maybe, a crazy game like a guy we'll talk about soon, but he seems like a safer play than a guy that's going to win you a week, I guess, right now. But.
Yeah, I mean, I do think so. And I think it happens in game script. I mean, again, they have those long drives, but they're doing it through the ground. And then obviously we know that Chase is an alpha. That guy, he's going to command the ball. So everything takes it away. I think it's taken away from Higgins right now. And again, if he doesn't create that separation that's needed, he's not in the game flow. And Boyd is a serviceable wide receiver too.
Oh yeah.
So Boyd can get open, so he's going to take away targets as well. So I think it's more of a combination of all of that stuff. Offensive output, offensive plays per game. You're looking at Chase being an alpha. You're looking at Boyd being a very solid wide receiver. So I think for fantasy purposes, he's not that guy that we'd like because they're a better football team with what they're running right now, which is not necessarily the greatest thing for us.
All right. So recapping good and bad. Now let's recap a performance that might have made a guy the number one waiver priority. So we go through on a weekly basis and we make our waiver claims, and there's usually 1 to 3 guys I'd say that are massive. Everybody's trying to throw their fab on, or they're trying to jump on and add them to their team based on the waiver priority. But I have to ask, and I already I had to traditionally call dibs on this player, but I have to ask who's maybe he's not your number one, but maybe he's just somebody that comes to mind that's a guy that you need to go and get on the waiver wire following this week that is rostered under 50% in leagues here.
Yeah, I'm going to go on a limb here, and I'm going to take Marquez Valdes-Scantling from the Packers. And the reason why is Alan Lazard looked like he hurt his shoulder last week, and I don't know how – again, we're doing this on a Monday. I don't know when we're going to find out what that injury looks like. But if he's out, you're looking at it, hey, you know what? He had 4 catches. He had a team-high 10 targets, Marquez did. 123 yards and a touchdown. I would like more efficiency, kind of like what we talked about with Mooney. But if – he's got big playability. He's got the Rams next week. But – if Jalen's going to blanket Devontae, Marquez is going to get tons of the targets. And if we're going to look at that, and Ramsey's definitely going to probably blanket Devontae Adams. And if Lazard is hurt, look for MVS to actually get those targets. You can see a 10-12 a target game again, and he's got big play explosiveness. Like he does have that ability. It's not amazing. But it can be doable. And so I think he's a good ad right now, especially in some deeper dynasty leagues too. You could grab this guy off waivers.
I like it a lot. I think he's a must-add this week. And I think we're always looking for, who's the next guy up in the Packers offense. And we look at the team, and they lost Robert Tonyan, obviously, this year with the ACL, and he was a big part of the offense. And A.J. Dillon's filling in for Aaron Jones, but I don't think A.J. Dillon's nearly as good as a pass catcher as Aaron Jones is. And Aaron Rodgers actually threw the ball a ton to Aaron Jones. So we're always looking for that guy to step up. And MVS, 10 targets. I think we've said it before. It's different quarterback to quarterback. So if we say, this guy we mentioned Cam Newton earlier. This guy got 10 targets from Cam Newton. That's very different than 10 targets from Aaron Rodgers. So when you see a guy get 10 targets from Aaron Rodgers, that's a huge sign. And MVS, we saw, week 3, he only had 3 catches, but he had 59 yards on it for 14.9 fantasy points. So this guy doesn't have to have My dogs are going crazy downstairs. Someone's breaking in, or my wife's home. It's one of the two. But this guy doesn't have to have 8 targets. 8 catches to have an effective game. He's a guy that can take it to the house. He can have 2 plays that go for 100 yards. So I do like that a lot. And we talked about T. Higgins. I'm not saying to start MVS over T. Higgins, but it's 2 different guys. We said one guy might be safe. He's going to get you your 13 points, but this other guy might give you 5, or he might give you 22 like he did this week. So I like that ad a lot. I got to talk.
All right, let's talk about your boy. This is all you right here.
In all honesty, like it's like the kid that's like knows he has to eat dinner, and he's eating through his dinner, and then they're like, "Fine, you can have the ice cream now," and then he's like all excited, and that's me right now because I have to talk about him. 40.8% rostered. Elijah Moore. 62-yard touchdown in this one. He had 8 catches on 11 targets for 141 receiving yards, 29.6 fantasy points. Weeks 8 through 11, he's had 2 games above 27 fantasy points. Yeah. So I don't want to get crazy, and you can always skew stats in certain degrees, but at the same time, the stats don't lie. But weeks 8 through 11, he's the wide receiver 1 in fantasy, and he's on waivers. He's the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. What's the best way for a player to progress is for him to be on the field getting touches. And I think that the coaching staff knows this. I think that it's going to be a big part of their game plan the rest of the season to give him work, because they know that they have a very, very talented wide receiver. And the best way to make him even more NFL effective is to get him more involved. And he had his highest snap percentage since week 2 in this one. So 67% of the snaps. That's a good sign. I like Elijah Moore a lot. The only thing that makes me worried is Zach Wilson. And I don't want to say Zach Wilson's bad. I'm not saying anything like that. It's just that we've seen Elijah Moore be very, very good with 3 quarterbacks now in the NFL, and none of them have been Zach Wilson. So that's what I want to see when he comes back, because them 2 in preseason, they look great together in preseason. I mean, Elijah Moore was like one of the preseason darlings, but he's been amazing, man. He's been amazing. And I think he's a must-add. He's a must-add.
He is. I agree with you. Now, I said this yesterday in a group chat, in the WRL group chat. We were talking about players that we either have a lot of or we don't. And I said, hey, I actually do have a lot of Elijah Moore. But I said, hopefully this is PG, but this is not a PG show. But I said I was too big of a pussy to put it out on Twitter and social media, because I had concerns about him. Like, I didn't necessarily I wasn't one of those guys that was on him early in college. I didn't know how well, like, his role. He was an outside guy that could translate to the slot in college. So I liked that. But then he went to the Jets, and I was like, I hate that spot. You got Corey. You're going to have now, when you're looking at what they've had, that Jamison Crowder was still there. And so there's a lot of question marks. So I do have Elijah in a few teams, and I'm happy with it. I think the questions that you bring up are valid. Also, can Joe Flacco continue getting him the ball, which I think he has. I do like that Elijah Moore is produced while everybody's healthy. That, besides Zach, but his receiving core, there's nothing to say oh, well, but no, there's no well buts. I mean, I guess Denzel Mims isn't healthy, but I don't know if we count him anymore. So I want to say, when we're looking at from that perspective, I love it. I love that idea. I like Elijah Moore a lot. But again, yes, I have him. Can Zach Wilson be that guy? I don't know. I know your brother loves Zach Wilson because he's been trying to trade for him all the time. I would say that yes. I'm holding on to him for the hope that he's going to figure it out. They rushed him out there too early. This is exactly what he needed to slow the game down, and then he'll be able to come out and produce towards the end.
For Elijah Moore, I don't want to keep going on rants because I talk about him too much all the time. But Houston and Philly coming up. Are you willing to plug him into your flex, or is it more roster dependent on who you have?
Oh no, dude, I'm playing his ass. You kidding me? With what he's done, I don't mind throwing him in there and rolling with it, and because you have to, especially with his production, right? And those are good. Those are fine matchups. But yeah, no, I think he's a must start, unless you have 2 wide receivers in flex. I get that. I play in a lot of leagues that has 4 wide receiver, or basically you play 4. I'm definitely starting him in that scenario. But even 3, I think he's a must start, especially with the injuries and everything there. You can't. You ride it. You got to ride this train.
Especially when you see the ceiling. You see 2 games now out of the last 3 above 27 fantasy points. It's not like you're banking, you're looking at Mecole Hardman saying, well, he might be able to score 27 fantasy points, but you haven't seen it. You've seen it with Elijah Moore. So I think that should give you some confidence. But yeah, I'm happy to see him rolling. And I do hope that it continues. But when it comes to waiver ads, one topic that doesn't get touched on enough, and we probably haven't covered it enough on this show, but we have a few times, but you always got to cut somebody when it comes to picking up people. So who's a player that comes to mind? So, a lot of people will have their waiver stuff come out tomorrow. I usually drop a quick 2-minute video on some waiver pickups. But who's the guy that comes to mind that you might need to cut because it's that point of the year and you feel like they really just don't need to be rostered anymore in order to make your team progress here for the rest of the year?
Yeah, this is our question, and I think this is one area. I'm glad you brought it up because next year I'm going to do a little bit more of this because we got to do a better job of saying, hey, who should be cut now? I think that's one area that we definitely do. For me, I don't know if you have already cut him. You should have. Naheem Hines, that dude's dust if Jonathan Taylor is going to be super god. And especially if he's going to get the targets in the receiving game. Naheem Hines, the only thing that you were hoping for is to get 5, 6, 7 targets and he scored a touchdown there, maybe a goal line touchdown. But it looks like Jonathan Taylor's, he is who he is, right? And we know that. So I think Naheem Hines got to be the guy that you definitely should have already cut. If you haven't already, you got to get rid of him because I don't see any value unless, Taylor got hurt. But we're going to just never say that out loud again. So, yeah, no. Naheem Hines, cut him.
It's wild because, the first game of the season, 6 receptions. He's had 6 receptions across the last 3 weeks. So he's useless right now because he's not a guy that's going to carry the ball. And he is above 50% roster right now. He's just above 51%. But they are using Jonathan Taylor as an all-purpose back. And it's great to see for him because he's not, in some sort of weird committee like some people thought he might have still been at the beginning of the season with Hines taking away the pass-catching role, especially opening up that way. But he's carrying the Colts right now. He's carrying the Colts offense. So they're going to keep rolling with him. And yeah, Hines, is he an insurance back? I don't know. I don't see him as a guy that, knock on wood, if Jonathan Taylor sat out, we won't say he's injured because we don't ever want to say that. Let's say he had to sit out a game for personal reasons. Hines isn't like he's going to rush the ball for 100 yards and have 6 catches. He's just not. My guy that comes to mind in before this week, maybe I wouldn't have said it because, I think if I thought coming into the season, if he gets the passing and the rushing work that he can have, some decent weeks, but it's Mike Davis. It's Mike Davis. He's 70.2% rostered. And I want nothing to do with Mike Davis. And a lot of people said that this was going to be a Mike Davis week because Patterson was not going to play. So you thought that Mike Davis might get some receiving work and get some carries. I had it last year. He had 7 games last season on the Carolina Panthers with 6+ catches. He doesn't get anywhere near that sort of work with the Falcons. And in a game that we thought he might be able to take that Patterson pass catching role, he was a dud. He had 6 total touches in this game. And we said it before. You said it yourself that touches equal fantasy points. He had 6 total touches. Quadri Allison had 11. That, to me, was the big dagger in the Mike Davis stock, that Allison came in with no Patterson and had more touches. He did come in and have some bigger gains, and I think that they were trying to feed him a little bit because he was one of the only sparks for this Atlanta offense because they looked terrible. But yeah, 7 total carries the last 2 games. Falcons and Matt Ryan suck right now. It's just simple. The offense looks terrible, and Mike Davis has not been worth rostering this entire season. It's just it's a fact. If you play Mike Davis at any point this season, you haven't been happy. So I'm fine right now cutting him. And I know the running back position is the thinnest, right? But he hasn't done anything. And when people are not even in the system, he's still not doing anything.
No, I mean, he was the worst pick you could have picked ever. I was out on him before. Everybody said, we're looking what he's going to be. He's not that. And yeah, you could have probably cut him 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks. You could have done that just for the value. We do have a good question. I wanted to make sure we got Daniel's question on here. He asked you, Nick, P2W Fantasy, play to win. Is it time to cut Tim Patrick? Would you drop him for more? And I'm assuming he means Rondale Moore.
For Rondale or Elijah?
Or Elijah Moore. Maybe Elijah. We were just talking about Elijah.
We were just talking Elijah. Yeah. I'm glad you caught the comment. All right. Yeah. All right. That is a good question. Would I cut Tim Patrick for Elijah Moore? I would cut Tim Patrick, but I would hope that I feel like Tim Patrick is a guy that still can be rostered. And I know that last game he wasn't great, but 2 games ago, 18.5 fantasy points. And he's had a couple games of somewhere between like 12 and 15 this season. So if I had to make the decision, I want Elijah Moore. But if you don't have to cut Tim Patrick and you can cut somebody else that you're not going to use, maybe I go that route. But I don't know. I guess he's not really a consistent start right now. What do you think, Evan?
I would cut Patrick for a more just because of ceiling. I think that you're going to look at that. And Bridgewater's okay. The quarterback plays whatever. I would say, like, I would usually use quarterback play, but then we got freaking Joe Flacco throwing passes to Elijah. But I would say that they've been consistent enough to where we know that he's going to get the ball on the targets. I know that they're probably going to target Elijah. I don't know if they're going to target Patrick. He's such hit and miss. So to me, it's higher ceiling, go after more, grab more, and go for it and go for a win. But I play fantasy a lot different than some people. Yeah. I'm a go for broke guy. So like I will roll and try to get 20, and if I get 0, I tried. Like that's kind of how I play, and it's successful sometimes. Sometimes you get a little burn, but I would take more in that deal.
Got another question. I'm glad you pointed out that we have some questions. Really appreciate that. Kenny asks, non-keeper league, would you drop Justin Fields? I'll let you go first on this one. Would you drop Justin Fields?
Yeah, I think it's okay to drop Fields, depending on with that injuries there. Nagy's trash. I don't think Fields has shown as consistently can actually score fantasy points there. Obviously, it depends on what you have, but I think if you have a guy in the top 14, I think Fields is safe to drop right now.
Yeah, I think he obviously weeks 8 and 9 was the QB3 across those 2 weeks, and he was really good for fantasy. But right now he's not going to play on Thursday against a good matchup. If he was playing on Thursday, I'd say maybe not, depending on who your other quarterback is. But right now he's just a roster clogger because he's not going to play and he's just sitting on your bench when you can take somebody else that can be more useful for your fantasy team. And in a 1 quarterback league, you need 1 quarterback for sure, but your second quarterback, you might just be able to stream. So you might not even need to roster 2. But the schedule coming up for the Bears is not super friendly for their team because they play Arizona week 13 and then week 14, Green Bay. And that's 2 defenses that, I wouldn't say, stream this quarterback if they're playing Arizona or Green Bay. I think it's the opposite. Yeah. So. Good question though. Good question though. It's unfortunate because he was on fire in fantasy. Unbelievable.
He was.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll wrap things up here. We got the game starting shortly. Buccaneers versus the Giants. So good luck if you need something out of that game. I think we both do for tonight. So we'll be tuning in. Kevin, anything coming up for you that you want to plug or drop, or what's the move the rest of the week here?
Yeah, you can check us out, Triple Play Fantasy. Obviously, we have a bunch of stuff on our YouTube channel. I'll be dropping a Dynasty Trade Target video, hopefully in the morning, so you can check that out. We're doing this on Monday, November 22nd. So looks like the 23rd. I'll probably get it out at some point in the morning, hopefully. If not, it'll be tomorrow night.
Awesome. Be on the lookout for that. And Kevin's individual work and the Triple Play work in general. Great team. I'll drop my waiver video tomorrow, probably a bunch of other random shit throughout the entire week, and then Sunday fantasy points, extra point show. But if you listened live or on iTunes, Spotify, whatever the case is, appreciate you guys. Follow us both on social media. We'll both be super active with our content. Ask us questions throughout the week. We'll be there to answer. So have a good night, guys. Oh. Enjoy your Thanksgivings too. There's a holiday.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, forgot.